Hello again, YouTube. This is Largo64, Larry, with something that, well, maybe I shouldn't put this up because Nick Gisburne already treated this subject and did it far better. But I wrote this a long time ago and I've wanted to share it for quite a while. I'm going to read it so I don't screw it up too bad. I certainly haven't memorized all the points. Here it goes. It's regarding Noah's Ark. The absurdity of the Noah's Ark story. The biblical account of the flood in Genesis is a story so absurd, no adult who had not been indoctrinated as a child could possibly be made to believe it. It's a childish description of a supremely childish act, a cosmic tantrum of a being said to have ultimate power, but evincing no maturity or restraint. God's act of destroying everything out of dissatisfaction with some of the creation was wasteful. More than wasteful. The act was infantile and unjust. It reminds one of a young child who, frustrated because he can't get his toys to line up the way he wants them to, takes an arm and wipes them off the table. Of course, this childish God's toys were sentient people, beings, the higher animals at least, who could experience terror and pain. A fair percentage of the humans among them must have been babies or children, none of whom was capable of being very wicked. None of the subhuman animals was even capable of evil, lacking knowledge of either evil or good. But they were murdered along with all the others. The murder of all those innocent human babies and children is not inconsistent with punishing the sons for the sins of the fathers. Most of the actions of this God were intrinsically unjust. Most who comment on the Noah story repeat the error that 2 of every kind of animal were taken into the ark. A more thorough reference to the biblical account would have told them that there were many more. Contrary to popular belief, only the unclean animals, those that were forbidden to man as food, were gathered in pairs, one of each sex. Animals that were considered clean, that is, those fit for human consumption, according to laws given elsewhere, were to be gathered by sevens, the male and his female, which sounds as if there had to be 14 of each clean species. Now this is interesting because the book of Genesis gives the dimensions of the ark. It was smaller than a modern cruise ship, yet we are asked, allegedly by Moses, to believe that it could accommodate 14 of every edible, that is clean animal, 2 of every unclean animal, 14 of every kind of bird, except birds of prey and scavengers, 2 of every variety of earthworm, insect, or bacterium, plus enough food and fresh water to keep them all alive for about a year. One wonders how much dirt had to be hauled just to provide for the earthworms. Beyond this, in order for there to have been a recovery after the flood, samples of all plant life would have to have been collected as well. This is generally left out of the story as told to children and adults. Only the animals are mentioned, yet Genesis is very specific on this point. Quote, "And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth." That's Genesis 7, verse 4. There are many more plant than animal species on this planet, few of which, except for the oceanic species, could have survived being inundated with salt water for even a fairly short time. As to the size of the ark, gross tonnage is defined as the capacity of the spaces in a ship's hull and of the enclosed spaces above the deck available for cargo, stores, fuel, passengers, and crew. The capacity is measured in cubic feet and divided by 100 to give gross tonnage. 100 cubic feet equals 1 ton. The ark at maximum, given the dimensions from the account in Genesis, had a capacity of less than 28,000 gross tons. That is, if all the enclosed space inside the ark were usable. That is, no walls, no floors, no partitions. If every animal consumed only its own weight in a year, many consume much more, the amount of food alone stored in the ark would have to have taken up more space than the animals. Now add fresh water. The weight of the insect species alone was probably greater than the capacity of the ark as described. Much more than weight has to be accounted for, however. Bulk of animals ranging in size from bacteria to elephants. wingspan of birds, unless there wasn't a flutter for the duration of the journey, space for movement, space for disposal of animal waste. Don't forget the ark was sealed for quite a while with only one window. Storage and adequate earth for all the plant life from microscopic plants to redwood trees. Okay, saplings. All had to be enclosed within that tiny ship. The ignorant person who wrote the account in Genesis had no knowledge of how many animal and plant species there were, no knowledge of the size or the shape of the world, and no concept of the logistics necessary to carry out the task. A fleet of arks greater than the D-Day Armada would have been necessary to accommodate all those creatures, and gathering them would have taken years, not the 7 days that God gave Noah. Furthermore, if all living things had been destroyed by the flood, whence came the olive branch that Noah's dove brought back after the earth had been covered for almost a year? No branch retrieved by the bird, or twig, unless it was a hell of a big dove, would have been recognizable after immersion for all that time. How did 8 people care for thousands of species, feeding and watering them when they had to have been stacked on top of one another? What happened to the freshwater species of fish and plant life? None of these questions is addressed in the biblical text, nor could it be. Now close your eyes and picture the scene as it must have been. Try to imagine all that mooing, braying, screeching, roaring, squawking, chirping, trumpeting, barking, sweating, defecating, urinating, stinking life, packed for months so closely together that none could even turn around, much less exercise. By comparison, the Black Hole of Calcutta must have seemed like a resort. But it happened, says the Bible, and the only miracle actually described is the production of all that water. Enough water to cover the entire earth with 15 cubits, about 27.5 feet, to spare. Quote, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered, says the book. Ararat is a little less than 17,000 feet tall. But the flood must have covered even Everest, 29,000 feet, plus 15 cubits. Miracle. But no evidence exists that this absurd story ever happened, or that it ever could have happened. Like I said, Nick did a lot better job, but I hope you enjoyed this anyway. I thought about it a long time ago, and I didn't get near as many details or tell it nearly as well as he did. I refer you to him in any case. I believe you can find most of his vids now on another site called NotNickGisburne, and they're worth looking for. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.